Hello and welcome to FortiGuard Live. I am Derek Manky, and joined with me once again is Aamir Lakhani. It's always great to see you, Aamir. So much always transpires.
It's always good to be here, and there's always some marathon race going on in the cyber world.
Yeah, I mean, especially when we it can be minutes minutes after we talk, and a lot can change. And you talk about hours or days, and oh boy, a lot has changed on the threat landscape. So let's just talk about, as usual, some of the developments. It's been a crazy year, and shifting from all the trends we talked about in the past, from COVID-19 lures and all of that. That seems, good news is those are dying down, but unfortunately now we're seeing new tricks, but some of the same old tricks, right? We're seeing actual targeted campaigns now that are picking up with steam. Of course, we saw DarkSide earlier in the year in the spotlight. Now DarkSide's gone dark again. We haven't really seen them, but we've seen gangs like Rebel take the place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So DarkSide has gone dark, but there's probably it doesn't mean all their affiliates have gone dark. And in fact, what's happened is people that were part of their affiliate program have just gone to other ransomware as a service programs, and they're stronger than ever. We've actually haven't seen any slowdown, and it's kind of unusual, right? This trend has been happening for the last 2 years. Anytime a major provider's like offline, we haven't seen a slowdown in attacks. In fact, attacks just continue to increase. They just find new ways and new avenues to attack.
Yeah, and before talking about the ransom as a service model, there's other things that we have to deal with as well, right? When I say we, I mean the industry and obviously us as vendors working in this space. So we issued just the other recently a threat signal on Print Nightmare, and this is another one of those big cases where we have a 0-day vulnerability, so fresh vulnerability that is lying dormant, if you will, in a native operating system. And that means a big attack surface, right? Big deployment, obviously, because it's native in the operating system. Maybe we can just walk through quickly what this one was. In terms of severity, at least part of, for a successful exploit, it did require, authenticated credentials with the domain controller, right?
Right. So, first of all, what I thought was interesting about this attack was that the proof of concept was released on GitHub. So researchers actually found this, released the proof of concept on GitHub, and it's not a patch that basically attacked. The vulnerability was essentially a 0-day. There was a patch that Microsoft came out with. People were a little confused about it, whether it protected against this attack or not. What we found out later was that patch was incomplete, so it protected parts of this attack, but not the attack that the proof of concept came out of. And then what happened was everyone downloaded that proof of concept and is attacking millions of potentially vulnerable systems all over the world.
Yeah. The good news is that there is virtual patch even before the patch was officially released from Microsoft for the update. We did create virtual patches. This is an advantage we have when we work with the MAPP, the Microsoft Active Protections Program, and we get the proof of concept, and we can create IPS coverage before a patch is available. So that was included in the threat signal that we released. The other partial good news of this is that, like I said, it did require an active login, if you will, user credentials to the domain controller. So meaning that, unlike the WannaCry and Eternal Blue of the past, it wasn't fully wormable, which is a good thing. But with that said, still a big issue and something that we're monitoring, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the good thing is that it required, at least initially, some credentials. The bad thing is that we know credentials get leaked all the time, and we've seen that over and over again. And then we also don't know how people are going to weaponize this and how they're going to take this to the next level. So we've already started seeing remote code executable attacks come out that are paired with this attack. And just to be clear, this is basically attacking the print spooler driver in Windows. It's basically the printer software in Windows that lets Windows communicate with all printers generically, something that everyone needs. And even if you're like me and say, well, I don't need a printer anymore, even if you're printing to a PDF file or something else, it still uses the same software, parts of the same software. So there's no way to really disable this. And once you have that software, which means you have Windows, you're affected by this. And as you said, credentials, that's a good thing, but we've seen so many credential leaks these days, it doesn't really slow down the attackers too much.
Yeah, good point. And we're going to continue to keep an eye on it. There's as any of these fresh vulnerabilities, there's always copycat attacks, other campaigns that follow. You know, we saw that, we've seen that all the time in the past, so I suspect that to happen again. So switching back to the RAS model, Revel has been now in the spotlight, full blown, following the JBS attack, and now recently with Kaseya. And one of the trends, concerning trends we're starting to see, is this focus on, I would say, business efficiency for the criminal enterprise. Right? Instead of just going after one big fish or target, they're now hitting ones that actually have managed services, or a whole bunch of clients that they can directly connect to and compromise through an initial breach. This method is old school in a sense, right? We saw this 15 years ago with attackers, going after server farms as an example, but now it's just on a whole new level.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to back up a little bit, Kaseya is a software manufacturer, software vendor. They make software that they sell to MSPs, managed service providers. A managed service provider handles, sometimes dozens to hundreds. Some of the big ones handles thousands of different customers. So we got basically almost like a three-tiered attack: the software vendor, their customers, and their customers' customers. Right. So we have to kind of look after that. And some of the end users, some of the end customers, they could be something as small as a 1 to 2 person dentist office, or it could be something as large as multiple grocery stores all over Sweden or something like that, right? And so there's multiple types of attacks that are going on. Ransomware attack came out on July 4th, really the July 4th weekend. And by the way, we know these attacks are going to happen, because IR is now really responsive in all countries because on big holidays. I guarantee, at least my personal opinion is, on December 25th, we're going to see another giant attack of this nature, just as big, just because they're waiting, and they're usually prepping months in it.
Look at when SolarWinds broke, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, clearly. So they do a lot of timing in their attacks. This is all part of that reconnaissance phase too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's really interesting that we're seeing attacks go down from from the big fish to the little fish and trying to combine it. And I think there's some thought behind this, because we know Revel, however you want to say it, they initially asked for 70 million for a master decryption key. There's been some hint that they'll negotiate down to 15 million or less. But if you think about all these individual companies, they probably have cyber insurance. I'm sure at 50 million, some cyber insurance companies are probably crunching numbers and thinking, how many hundreds of claims do I need to pay out? Or can I just buy the master key? Or maybe multiple companies are thinking that. So I think if they really thought about that connection, if it wasn't just lucky that they fell into that, that's kind of genius, evil genius for sure, on the way they were thinking on attacking them.
It really goes to show the sophistication level. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We're seeing things that are normally belonging in the nation state APT side of the house now sitting in the world of cybercrime, just because they're getting deep pockets, they're becoming much more sophisticated, and in an evil sense, business oriented in that matter, right? Because they're trying, instead of doing, in this case, right, going to, let's say, hundreds of organizations in a sort of door-to-door salesman fashion, right? going from door to door and getting, asking for 40, 50K, whatever it was. That's a lot of work, right? That's a lot of big scale and scope. So why not, instead of doing that, take this centralized approach, and they have done, and negotiate for just the master key decryption. They realize that, and I think it, like you said, part of that can also relate to what is an impacted organization thinking, right? They're getting in that mind frame and then counteracting it on their end, and that's definitely a new trend we're seeing in cybercrime.
Yeah, I do want to talk about one thing we're starting to see as a trend is they initially asked for the payments in XMR or Monero. Monero is a cryptocurrency. It's a privacy, focused blockchain. So unlike Bitcoins, you can't really look at the transactions. You can't trace the transactions. More ideal if you want to stay anonymous. So they were asking for that. Now, if anyone's done anything in Monero, $40 million, like unheard of. You cannot acquire that much Monero. It's going to be very, very difficult. Even from some of the initial numbers we heard from individual companies, they were asking for around $45,000 US for decryption, probably per machine, or like $4 million. Like if you were hooked up to Active Directory and they detected that, you were asking for a higher amount. But even if you're looking at some of the lower amounts, it's very difficult to get that amount of Monero. So, I thought at first that might have been a scheme to like actually pump up the price of Monero. Monero actually has only gone up in value about 4% in the last 24 hours. So that probably wasn't it. And it looks like they have allowed now Bitcoin payments, but they're adding a premium on that, like a 10% surcharge on that. So I thought that was interesting. But I think we're going to start seeing more and more of this. And we are seeing more and more cryptocurrency, that is more privacy focused, things like Monero, Zcash, XUSD. There's a whole bunch of new coins or altcoins coming out that are privacy focused. And I wonder if that's going to like start not only driving up the ransomware market, but also like the altcoin blockchain markets as well.
Yeah, especially when we talk about, and that's what I wanted to ask you about and talk as well, is tracing of this as well too. I mean, just the nature of blockchain and crypto. We have, and this is the unicorn, right, where we see some funds that do get recovered after a ransom attack. Very, very rare that would happen, with Bitcoin. But when you look at sort of diversifying and spreading this out over all these different altcoin bases, that's a whole new strategy for cyber criminals too. It could be, right? It's like, money laundering 101 for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So remember, if I send you a Bitcoin, or I would never send you a Bitcoin, but if I send you like a small portion of a Bitcoin, you can trace that. If you have my address, my Bitcoin address, you can see that I send it at least to your address, right? I may not know who you are, you may not know who I am, but we can at least trace through addresses. So if I send something from one address to another address, that's completely traceable. I can go to blockchain.com and just like put in the address as well as a number of other blockchain nodes. And then if you send that money out of your wallet address to somewhere else, or you split it up like 10 times, I can still trace that as long as I have those addresses. Now, granted, there's a lot of like detective work and paperwork involved, but we're living in a world of automation. There's like a lot of automation you can do that just kind of builds those trees and spider webs to show you exactly where the money went. And a lot of times when you're actually trading out Bitcoins for real money, a lot of financial institutions globally have what they have a protocol called Know Your Customer, or basically these KYF type protocols, where you have to like give some sort of ID so you can eventually maybe tie an ID to a Bitcoin address, and that's what law enforcement is using to catch criminals.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. That's on the right hand side, but I think it's as these attacks unfold, more than ever important on what we call the left of boom, right? On the left side, on the preventative part before execution or ransomware. We did respond, of course. We were working on the Kaseya attack as it unfolded right from the first day. We have released our threat signal on that, responding to it as we did with Print Nightmare, but for Kaseya as well as our blog, and also a knowledge base article with in-depth information on FortiEDR coverage, as well as threat hunting, right? Everything you need to know if you are potentially impacted, and obviously on mitigation strategy too. That's all very important. One other thing, just in the sophistication, is going back to Rebel or Evil. On top of everything we just talked about in the business strategy, there's also the ransomware itself. The malware's become more sophisticated. There's research done, in May about actually in Q1 this year, about a new safe mode, functionality they put in it. So the whole idea of that is to boot into the safe mode, change the default password so that all security applications would be killed, as an example. And they're also being aggressive with scrambled voice over IP calls, right, to contact their victims, saying, we're going to go public with this right away to media, to your impacted customers. It's really aggressive, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. They know like where the money's at. They want to get their money quick and fast. We've heard, even with Kaseya, we've heard all of these rumors on possibly how many people they've infected. At the end of the day, they don't care like how many people they've infected. They care about getting the most amount of money in the quickest amount of time, and then just moving on. And because they know if they do that, right, if they get their money, they move on, they're going to be out of the news again. It's going to be less pressure on them. The more they stay in the spotlight, probably more people are going to be involved in that. More people are going to be looking at them more closely. So it's really always a grab cash and run to kind of technique, and that's true. And they're going to do that over and over again because it's proving to be very successful every time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks again, man. It's always great having great conversations with you. As I said, it's really important to stay up to date on this. So we're always releasing coverage in terms of our threat signal, our blog. You can find that on blog.fortinet.com. We have a threat research category for FortiGuard Labs, and really recommend to follow that. We'll be providing updates to that and all the other coverage with Print Nightmare as an example too, as it unfolds. Thanks again for watching. I am Derek Manky, and this has been another episode of FortiGuard Live.